Hi, everybody. I'm still going to be talking about subjects related to the current conflict in Israel-Palestine because it's still all I've been thinking about. So, if you usually come here for less less heavy observations, it's going to be another one of those episodes. And I want to say right up top, PCRF, the Palestinian Children's Relief Fund, Medical Aid for Palestinians, MAP, the American Near East Relief Agency, I think it's called, ANERA, ANERA, the UNRWA, they get food to people, the Palestinian Red Crescent Society, all good charities that you should be donating to. We will post links in the show description like we did last week. And yeah, even if you're sort of a both sides person with this, I think your knowledge will lead you to believe that we already give a lot of money to Israel. Palestine needs it more. They have less financial resources to work with, and they genuinely need medical and food aid, which these organizations will help provide. So please donate to that now more than ever as the brutality on Gaza escalates, and people are left with horrible fates and places they can never go back to. This situation isn't ending soon. I hope it does, but if I were a betting man, I don't think it's going to end within the next while, and I really hope it doesn't escalate further. But I can't predict that. Who knows? I just really hope there is some sort of ceasefire, or it dies down, or there's some sort of political will for that, and then not just a ceasefire, but rather there is a continued consistent push for Palestinian rights after this. But who knows what will happen? I don't know what will happen because there's a lot of manipulated information. Disinformation is interesting because sometimes it isn't even disinformation. Sometimes it's not even information that's wrong. It's just sort of speculation, or even advanced speculation that is taken as gospel, that we're experiencing now in the current news cycle related to this conflict. And it's been driving me a little crazy, because if you're on one side of this thing, as I am, I'm sort of pro-Palestine, so my bias lies in willing to believe news that is more pro-Palestine. I've been, fully convinced of that. I am axiomatically married to the idea, and I don't mind saying it, that I think the thing of utmost importance that will lead to amelioration of this is by giving Palestinians many more rights, by giving them lots of their land back, by giving them, not just land back, not just their homes back, but also, I don't know if one state solution or two state solution works, but just, having some sort of greater agency and freedom of movement than they have now under the current Israeli occupation. I think that is the one thing that will solve this. Is just Israel giving up its power, which is a very difficult thing to convince a country to do, or anyone to do. Is no one wants to give up power, right? No one wants to give up the ability to have control over what they see as an existential threat or security to their lives. That's what we're fighting against. And, that's what we're always fighting against with anti-colonialist stuff is you need to convince somebody who you can't really fight on a physical level because they're so overpowering to you. You need to convince them to give up some of their power. So how the hell do you do that? And that always seems like the intractable situation. I mean, you can try and make it financially difficult for them to hold on to that power, usually is a method that people use, because, if you can't attack them directly, you can at least make them expend money to the point where they can no longer afford to do the maintenance of your colonial state, which, who knows what's happening. But so there's been a lot of instances of sort of news cycle disputes, or the idea that Israel is faking, or they're making a lot of Hasbara that's sort of unconvincing, and they're really like flooding the news cycle with lots of sort of difficult to prove or somewhat bogus information. I guess you could say, and the argument that centrists would have is that, well, Hamas is doing the same thing. They exaggerate stuff as well, or they put news stories out there to prod the cycle, a little, and earn sympathy for their side, which is, fair. I think every side tries to prevent information as sympathetically, but it seems that when Israel does it, they have like their proof is stranger. It seems like the proof that they present is usually, there are things about it that seem to sow doubt in people that have reason to doubt Israel, or who are naturally predisposed to that. I mean, you can point to an example of like the one that every Palestine supporter points to is Israel killed Shireen Abu Akleh, a journalist, a while back, and they denied it, and they denied it, and they denied it. They said it was Palestinians did that to her, and then it says, okay, it was us, after. So this is, we know they do stuff like this, which is why, and I don't know if they lie about absolutely everything. I would no way of fucking proving that. I don't, what the fuck do I know? But we know they will lie about certain key things that are really bad for their reputation, or they know are bad for reputation, or are worth obfuscating the story about. Because if they took credit for killing a journalist, that would be, you shouldn't have killed journalists. That's not something you should do. We all agree to that, but so if you are aware of something like this story, and that's your image of what Israel does and how it promotes itself, or its sort of military intelligence, then you probably have internalized a healthy skepticism towards anything the IDF puts out. It's and I'm not saying you shouldn't have skepticism towards the other side as well, but Israel is just much more powerful. They literally just have more money than Palestine, and which they use to, curry favor in their most important allies, which is us in North America. It's not like, I'm sure if Palestine were able to do media promotion, and they have some institutional allies in places in Qatar and with Al Jazeera, but it's just they're up against a media faction that I sincerely believe is biased towards promoting the U.S. state interest in the maintenance of Israel, which I don't think that's a controversial. We can all agree that the U.S. likes Israel and wants to maintain Israel. You can dispute as to the reasons why, but you can argue about whether it's a noble thing about giving the Jews some sort of comeuppance, whether we got together as a society and gave the Jews some sort of comeuppance after 5,000 years of suffering culminated in an unseen and unimaginable nightmarish bloodletting, or you could also believe, as some of it is that, I'm sure, I'm sure there's a lot of people that believe that genuinely equate support for Israel with this sort of noble progressivism of, the power of democracy and what it can do. I don't think they are bad faith or cynical when they believe that. I think that, they're sort of a little wrong. It didn't represent that, or it turned out differently. Or, you can believe, as I do, that what Israel represents is sort of a material, strategic, military option to put pressure on Arab states that you can then use for statecraft and to get resources and to negotiate with them, because you can always just flex a little muscle nearby. You can mobilize stuff easily through the Mediterranean to get it to where you need to be. So it's, it functions on a very practical level for the United States in sort of expanding its interests and its influence and its ability to gather resources, as any country does, right? So I obviously, America and Israel have a mutual vested interest in promoting each other, because one survives based on the aid of the other and the implicit threat that their military will be used to quell any hostile incursions into Israel, and America benefits off of Israel by as its supporters would say, the linchpin of democracy in the Middle East, which is I I dispute that statement, and I think, depending on your outlook of that, whether you think it is this sort of noble progressive, and which is very much an axiomatic outlook, something that you can't necessarily prove quantitatively, something that you sort of come by through visceral or anecdotal experience qualitatively, or if you presume you're all working with the same information, which we're not, that's what we're going to talk about as well, but I think you're also more willing to distrust the stuff that the Israeli government and the IDF puts out there. Inherently, if you do believe, as I do, there is a vast asymmetry between the parties, I think when you're talking to liberals or people that do both sides stuff with this, they believe there is not as much of an asymmetry. They believe there is, in actual fact, a symmetry between the parties. That Palestine, Israel does a lot of bad stuff to Palestine, but Palestine is used as this proxy country by powerful regional interests like Iran or Egypt in order to curry favor and gather resources and do resource consolidation for the Arab world, in the same way that the U.S. does resource consolidation for themselves by having Israel as a key ally in the area. So, and if you believe that Palestine is backed by these powerful entities, and that creates a sort of symmetry, then I think you're more willing to believe what Israel puts out there, because you think that, okay, they're playing the same game as Palestine, right? There's, this state is a proxy for our interests, and Palestine is a proxy for the interests of Iran or Egypt or even, Russia. Some people tie it to Russia too, which I think is that's a bit of a stretch. But that's the thing, is that I think people are evaluating support for Palestine too with support they received in the past. Like, Palestine once did have more symmetry with Israel in terms of military backing throughout the Arab world, and through, even, I don't know if I'm getting it wrong, but Soviet backing as well. There was more. There was more I shouldn't say the Soviet thing. They did have a lot more investment from the Arab world back in the day, back during the 6 Days War. But what we've seen over the past 50 years, and I don't know if liberal people would acknowledge this, but is sort of a very deep erosion of that military support and solidarity from other Arab countries, such that the asymmetry between Gaza and Israel has only gotten worse over time, especially after there was that whole normalization effort with the Arab world, and Bibi got all buddy-buddy with the UAE, and now that's sort of backfiring in light of the recent events. But for a while, because of just the momentum of globalization and capitalization and the intermingling of the Arab world with the global capital of America and everything, as what happened in the 90s and beyond, it really it really that more than anything, I think, eroded support for Palestine, just because it's like, man, we can do business, we can do the crazy UAE shit, we can build the Burj Khalifa because all this fucking Western money's flowing in now that we've normalized relationships. We kind of like doing this now. We like, because who doesn't like the excesses of capitalism? It's fun. You built the Las Vegas sphere. It's great. We can fuck over the world, but we got the Las Vegas sphere. And so, something that I'm not, I'm not immune to the charms of the sphere. I like the sphere. Yeah, so that sort of, we saw that eroding support as the Arab world became more globalized, and we, in the West, normalized relationships with them as well. Especially, I mean, we've been allies with Saudi for the longest time, but we're, allies. It's it's going to take a lot to destroy that relationship because it's sort of mutually beneficial in a toxic way. But yeah, we supported them with Yemen. That shit's fucked up. You can look up that shit. But so if your understanding of the situation with Israel-Palestine is that there is a vast asymmetry between the parties, so much so that you cannot call this a war. You cannot call this parties on equal footing, or it doesn't resemble a war. It resembles this massacre, just this constant massacre that's been occurring over 70 years. This slow, lurching, devastating massacre that has been occurring over the course of 70 years. Where, so if you're like me and that's what you think, yeah, you're pretty much going to be suspicious of everything Israel tells you. Maybe, and the thing is, sometimes they tell you the truth, because that's what also helps with disinformation or propaganda as well. Sometimes they will say something true, and they will build on it or exaggerate it in order to suit their needs. Because if it's a little true and then there's just another detail that you add on, then who cares? It was already true. And I think the best example of this was early in this news cycle. There was the talk of Palestinian of Hamas. They were beheading babies. Hamas were beheading babies, and obviously, if it's true, it's very bad. But a lot of the sources for that seem to come internally from like single sources from IDF spokespeople. And so a lot of people then on the internet who were sort of skeptical of this IDF information, they said, well, do you have any proof, beyond what you said? Do you have like photos? We can see photos of dead Gazan children. They're happy to show us. I mean, they're not happy, but they're willing to show us I shouldn't say fucking happy, they're willing to show us the fucking photos of their dead children, who have been like brutally maimed or mutilated. It's like by Israeli airstrikes. It seems very easy to access the photos of those dead children if you want to see them. You can go to Times of Gaza, you can go to that account right now and see all the horrible things you want. So why are you not as willing as them to show that? What is preventing? Are the images so horrible that you can't show it? But then they did like a bunch of photos of like these are injured children, but they weren't related to the 40 beheaded babies they were talking about earlier. And then I think anyone on the left who is on the firmly pro-Palestine side, they were just saying that this story is fake right from the very beginning. It is made to seem like these Hamas militants are, that's what, even in the language you use about them, are Hamas militants or are they terrorists, right? Are they doing terrorism on the behalf of like a government? Because Hamas is a government as well. So I guess governments are capable of doing terrorism in a way, but if you're like treating them as a government or like a sovereign state as opposed to an organization, then they're like, can they be aren't they militants? But I guess, we call them terrorists because terrorism has a pretty broad definition, which they absolutely do meet, which is, using violent acts designed to incur fear for some sort of political motive. Which, yeah, sure, it's terrorism on that account. But then everybody does terror. Literally everyone is a terrorist by that broad definition as well. So, they're militants when it's you, and they're terrorists when it's them. I guess, it's also like terrorism usually isn't backed by like the prevailing government. I mean, a lot, actually, no, that's not true. Lots of terrorism is backed by the prevailing government of a region, but usually it occurs through like proxy groups like Al-Qaeda. I guess Al-Qaeda controlled the Afghani government for a while. So, what the fuck do I know? But, why do we call them terrorists and not militants, even though we do comparable things to them? Because they're not us. They're unorganized. They're animalistic. They're chaotic, right? And why, Hamas is already killing people. You can prove that. There are plenty of like very undoctored seeming videos that show Hamas killing people that, anyone with any semblance of sense would probably believe. You can see them do terrible things. So why exaggerate it? Well, because that people who are supporting you already, and like everybody can acknowledge that Hamas is, killing a bunch of people. So is it that much harder to believe that they're doing something like beheading 40 babies, right? Is it so much harder to believe that? When you ask for proof, it's like, you're crass. How dare you ask for proof? They said it. They already killed all these people. You can't believe they did this as well? But the reason why, they need you to believe that they'll do stuff like do the 40 beheaded babies is to show you that they are irrational. It's the same reason why they equate them with ISIS as well. ISIS, they were foaming at the mouth fucking psychopaths, that didn't have a fucking plan, didn't have any real attainable goal, so they need, and the only way they were going to be stopped is with violent dispersion, right? So it is in Israel's interest to convince you that Hamas is the same way. These are people that can't be reasoned with. They have the same sort of disconnection to life as ISIS, right? They have the same, they fundamentally depleted decency. They aren't people who are using violence exclusively for political means. They are using violence to terrorize and undermine, and they are the thing that must be stomped out, or they're Nazis in a way. They are equating them with Nazis, people that have gone so mad that the only way to end their reign is with a terrible, brutal violence. And I don't believe this to be true. I'm sure if you disagree with me, or you're a liberal, a person who's invested in the idea of Israeli symmetry with these powers, then you're probably going to view Hamas as capable of these things, and driven by some sort of wild Islamo-fascist rage or something like that. And who can peer into the minds of men? But I do believe that Hamas is an organization which is very fundamentally different from ISIS. I mean, they hate each other, which is, they were opposed with each other. They were enemies, which should show you how much they dislike each other. But also, they are not frothing at the mouth lunatics in the same way that ISIS was. They are an organization that has demands that, if attained, they can potentially see reason. They still do brutal things. I don't deny that they killed a bunch of people. They absolutely killed a lot of Israeli people in the most recent thing. But the more you take that information, and then the more you extrapolate that, then they've beheaded 40 babies. I don't think they did that. wanted more proof from that story in order to back up that claim, other than what appeared to be a couple of IDF spokespeople. But I know that seems crass. It might seem crass to you, but I think when you're dealing with this amount of information, and especially a claim as, egregious and serious as 40 beheaded, something other than just the word of a person who we know is existentially opposed to this other party and is willing to say or do anything in order to fulfill that goal, at least by my measure. So there was that story. There was the 40 beheaded baby story, which, if you're a liberal and you're like fuming and you think that I have been brainwashed by Hamas and I'm supporting a narrative, then, okay, that's fine. We can be, none of us are solving this. All right. None of us sitting at home being armchair detective or anything like that are solving this. We can maybe do material things like get people to support organizations that we like or call various senators. But on an individual level, we're just having a discussion here. So if you're like mad at me right now, just remember, I don't affect you. I truly don't affect you. I'm not trying to spin propaganda. Well, I guess I am in a way. I am firmly pro-Palestine, but I don't think it's propaganda because I have convinced myself. I think I know for a vast certainty that it is the objectively correct position to take in this situation because I have internalized the idea of the vast asymmetry between Israel and Palestine and how just cosmically incredibly unfair the whole fucking situation is. And if you don't believe that, if you do believe that, they are just a proxy region for Iran and there are more powerful forces at work because, you pay attention to the NatSec news, you are the OSINT guys, then fine, whatever. I'm not going to try to burst your bubble. You can believe you are smarter than me, which is fine. Lots of people are smarter than me. You might be correct. I don't think you are. But who knows anything in this vast world? I mean, that's the thing. That gets down to the crux of so if you believe that every side is capable of doing disinformation, and not just disinformation, but sophisticated disinformation. Like we saw some we're seeing some sort of dog shit disinfo by the IDF recently. But, we know that everybody is sort of lying to each other a little constantly in order to control narratives, right? That's just a fact of the world now. I actually think that's sort of why the whole, troll posting or, wantonly or purposely spreading, funny misinformation on Twitter, it's actually, there's a strange utilitarian purpose to it, which is just sort of being able to intuitively notice posts that are meant to prod you or meant to get at you that have no real backing or that somebody doesn't actually believe. It in a way, because they sort of do this play form of media literacy, it actually, in a strange way, prepares you a little for doubting information that is brought to you by more credible sources. So I think that's the sort of that's what I say intuitive, because that's what it gets right down to, is intuition. I think as disinfo becomes more sophisticated, as deepfakes get better, as AI gets better, which I think it will. Some people say it won't. It'll run into stuff, but I see this technology increasing because there are a lot of single-minded nerds out there who like to bring their ideas into creation, and that's what you're competing with. So they're going to advance that technology, and so it will become just impossible to trust anything in the future. It's already difficult now, but I mean, forget about, artists are losing out because of AI imagery. No, what's really going to be fucked up about AI imagery is that if it gets sophisticated enough, then there goes reality. Instant information, instant noise, instant fucking constant disinfo that we're going to be seeing. So, how are you going to be able to divine truth in a world like that? As that technology becomes more sophisticated and more accessible to anyone, such that any person with a phone could make sophisticated disinfo. I hope it doesn't get to that point, but what if it does? And I think it looks like it's going to do that. I fucking hope I'm wrong, and I'm frequently wrong. So but that is sort of my anxiety right now, that this will become so powerful that we won't be able to practice rationality anymore, because rationality is really only as good as the information that informs it. I think that's why we like science and math, because to some degree, it's very difficult to fake a lot of the stuff when it's been assessed and done properly, when it's been through double-blind experiments, or it's sort of evolved through the scientific method. There's lots of bad science and junk science out there, and it's on you to sort of disprove that and try and divine between which science has been tested accurately and which hasn't. But it is easier to know objective truths in those mediums than it is in qualitative, historical, or journalistic mediums, where it is dependent on qualitative language to create reality. And once you're able to fully manipulate that qualitative language, where do you fucking go? How do you know anything is true at that point? Is Philip K. fucking Dick at that point, And I think the answer lies in what we're seeing now is intuition, is faith, is truthiness, is, as Colbert put it at the beginning of the Bush era, that made his show pretty good, and then he got less good. But we are now more than ever will be having to hold on to our axiomatic, subjective, almost faith-based beliefs on what is true and what isn't. It's going to be a lot more in divining what the truth is, because the sophisticated disinfo tools are just going to keep promulgating at a huge fucking rate. Are you going to keep repeating themselves at a huge fucking rate? You are now going to become dependent on your beliefs. Your beliefs, your feelings, your qualitative observations are going to matter more than anything that purports to be a quantitative assessment, which is really fucking weird, I don't want that to happen. I don't want faith to become a more reasonable way, or an equally reasonable way of knowing as information, of rationality. But looks like it's going that way. And I think that's ultimately, I want to talk about an example recently of how sort of your faith, or your intuitive understanding of a situation, will color what you believe on an issue. And I'll use an example from the conflict and another piece of the news cycle, which was the hospital bombing. That specifically, there was one hospital bombing. I forget the date that it occurred. It was recently, but when it was initially reported, there was a video that was vetted and confirmed by major news sources, confirmed by WAPO and other stuff like that. It was a video shot from a window. Did not look fake or doctor. I have no way of knowing it, but many people weighed in on it and said that the initial video that came out with the news of that hospital bombing was, verifiable and accurate. So I'm going off of that. And you watch the video. It's shot from a window looking over the hospital. You hear what sounds like a streak, and then a big explosion and a big fire at what is the Al-Aqli hospital in in Gaza. And so the numbers that initially came out of that was 500 casualties or 500 deaths. And people who are pro-Palestine were like, this is, obvious evidence of Israel's brutality and par for the course, because they've been bombing hospitals all week. They frequently bomb hospitals. The ministry, the Christian ministry that the hospital was attached to in Jerusalem, confirmed that they had received, warnings from Israel about the hospital bombings. That hospital had already been bombed to a much less destructive degree. Earlier that week, Israel is now currently telling all hospitals to evacuate. So it's something they do. Israel does bomb hospitals. It doesn't usually result in 500 deaths, though. It results in 5 deaths here, 7 deaths. Something that, when the destruction ramps up to this scale, something that is more easily ignorable for the armchair, stupid Amerifat news watcher like me. So, you ignore those ones, but this is a big one that happened. So, Hamas initially blames it, and but it's weird. People saying like this information was just coming from Hamas, but it seems like there were like a bunch of doctors and civilians around the hospital too that were not necessarily Hamas affiliated that were also testifying to the likelihood that it was an Israeli airstrike. But I guess these are randos, right? We can't verify them, right? So it's like whatever, you believe what you want to believe. So and then so there's this dispute as to, Israel doesn't take credit for it. They say that what happened was, initially they say it's a misfired Hamas rocket, and then that was going into Israel, and then they say it was an intercepted Hamas rocket that then fell on the hospital and created some sort of gas explosion, I guess, or created some sort of incendiary. Because if the initial video, that like big fireball video that we saw from the window is to be believed, that was a huge fucking explosion, right? I don't know if it comes from a Hamas rocket or not. I believe it came from, I'm gonna say up front, I think it was an Israeli airstrike. You can hate me if you want. You can say I'm getting bad information, but I'll sort of explain. I'm gonna try and justify that. I'm not gonna take it for granted. I'll tell you the news source that I'm using to justify that. So, yeah, then it becomes a Hamas rocket that falls to the earth, creates some sort of incendiary fireball that, is responsible for some amount of casualties. Then, the following day, there becomes daytime footage available of the destruction, and the bomb or whatever, the bomb hits it appears to have hit a parking lot, left a very small crater, and people are doubting not just the fact that it was an Israeli airstrike. They say it seems more in line with the smaller type of the smaller, less impactful type of missile that Hamas seems to use. They say they're also doubting the casualty count now, because they're saying that I'm sure some people were killed, but 500 seems like a lot, and these are Hamas numbers, right? And these OSINT guys, they're doing analysis around the crater and the damage around their hospital, and they say, I don't think what they were saying it was a JDAM, what some military experts or some people who are in the pro-Palestine were identifying the Israeli airstrike missile as a JDAM missile, which I know nothing about artillery or bombs or rockets. I'm just going off what I see on the fucking news. So if you believe the initial numbers 500, and you saw the what seems to be the verified video of the bomb going off, sort of that little streaky noise, this noise, and the scale of the explosion, then you see somebody, and That's the other thing about the fucking disinfo, is there are military experts. There were, like, people who are fully credentialed, who will go to the news and talk to the news, who are people that would have experience with this, and you would have a reason to trust about this. There seemed to be an equal amount, at least by my reckoning, ones who said, yes, this is a JDAM, this is a JDAM, and then another who says, no, this is not a JDAM. I'm sure, the people, the NatSec people are saying, oh, all of the military experts who said it's a JDAM, they're frauds, or, they're some randos, or, they're Nazis in hiding or something like that. And I don't know, maybe, but probably not. I think, so that's the difficulty. You have credentialed people who are saying the opposite things on this. And both sides have an interest to distort the reality around them. So who do you trust? And it comes down to fucking intuition. You need to, at some point, it comes down to these sort of basic logical things. And I know that sounds stupid because it sounds like, well, just need a little common sense in this situation, which is the clarion call of every moron, just need a little common sense. But that's what this disinfo thing is forcing us to do. We now have to parse this shit out using sort of this qualitative anecdotal logic, because we can't trust rationality anymore because all information is distorted. Or, maybe that's what Israel wants you to think. I really think that just in the sheer willingness to show us the breadth and the amount of dead children on their side, I think Gaza is just way less likely to distort or they don't have to distort information enough, because the destruction that's happening to them is much more serious and much more difficult. And the recent killings of the Israeli people were serious and difficult, which is when I say that how much more fucking serious and difficult the Gazans are, and how much more willing they are to show us these, what seemingly very real photos, these very real reports. And not just real reports, it's like there's a million Gazans, people who are in there, who are not affiliated with Hamas, who are doing on-the-ground reporting, who have fucking Twitter accounts, who are like, the Israeli airstrikes will not stop, and the next day they're dead. You don't believe all of those people. It's like, at some point, there are certain things you can do to assess which randos on the internet are telling the truth. That's also the other thing about the hospital bombing that came out, was that weird fucking audio recording that Israel produced of the two Hamas terrorists saying that, oh yeah, it was from one of our rockets. And then Channel 4 got a hold of that, and they immediately debunked it. You could see a bunch of Arabic speakers in the comments saying, these Hamas guys, they are not speaking with Gazan accents. They're, the audio is mixed to different channel. There's weird, suspicious stuff about it. And they're saying the exact thing that confirms Israel's thesis as well. It's not, and they have this. They can plan stuff in secret, but Israel has the capability to just listen in on them I don't understand. And if Israel wasn't responsible for the hospital bombing, why would they even need to release this audio recording in the first place? I don't this seemingly lazy piece of Hasbara. Why would they? And why I believe that it was also Israel for the hospital bombing is because, the sole institutional news source that I've seen that seems to have any clarity on this, excluding Al Jazeera. I know liberals won't take Al Jazeera seriously because, Qatar has a lot of interest in, Islam, they're motivated by Islam or whatever. But Channel 4, which is not Channel 4, which is a pretty neutral, I don't think they have an axe to grind, really. They seem relatively unbiased to me. They've been doing some top-notch reporting on these controversies, ones which don't definitively say that Israel did the airstrike. I'll add that if you watch the Channel 4 coverage, they do not definitively say that Israel did the airstrike. What they actually do is they go to these companies which actually do have expertise in analyzing video and audio data, and they report on them for what the airstrikes are. Channel 4, you can look this up. The Channel 4 report on the hospital bombing is they got a company called Earshot, which apparently does audio analysis of videos. Who knows? I just found out about them. I'm taking them at their word. It's vetted by Channel 4, which is in some sort of institution that has credentials and seems interested in doing some sort of accurate reporting, just as much as any other channel, right? But, if that's true, then I should be able to trust them on this, right? So they get this company called Earshot. They get Forensic Analytics, another company, to do audio and video analysis. And they say that from the Doppler effect analysis from this Earshot company, they say that the rocket did not emanate from the southwest, as Israel had said, because that would have been where Hamas was launching it. It came from the northeast, from like the direction where Israel is. But, even with that information, Channel 4, good on them for their journalistic ethics, wouldn't commit to fully saying that an Israeli airstrike did it. Because that's still the evidence, while convincing to someone like me, who's obviously pro-Palestine, is still kind of circumstantial. It's not definitive, foolproof. What they also reported on is Hamas said that they had an Israeli warhead that was evidence of the hospital bombing, but they never produced that warhead, which is, who knows for that reason. Maybe Hamas was lying about that. It's likely that they were. Or who knows? I have no idea what to fucking assess. That's the problem with I have to go off intuition at this point, because there's all this fucking clutter. There's all this goddamn clutter, so at some point you just have to believe that axiomatic part of you, which is, I think, what most people are going on nowadays, even if they've convinced themselves that they are the most objective, rational data analytics people in the world. But they will ignore this Channel 4 stuff or say that's propaganda, or they have some sort of axe to grind or something like that, because that would suit their narrative, right? So... yeah, well, who knows what fucking happened. I think Israel did the airstrike. I can't prove it for certain. But yeah, even on the Channel 4 reporting, when they were talking about... so what the OSINT guys were talking about in the daytime analysis is it looks like there wasn't much incendiary damage to the building. It hit a parking lot. There wasn't a big crater. Couldn't have been a JDAM, right? As some of the people were saying. Couldn't have been a JDAM, right? Because JDAMs leave a bigger crater. But then... of course, there's an answer to that, which is, there's a type of JDAM called an airburst, which explodes before it hits the ground, right? Which Channel 4 also reported on. It's like, there wasn't a large crater, but there are things called airbursts. And, while Channel 4 wasn't outright implying that Israel did the airstrike, it seemed that they were, saying that story is like... the OSINT people are going to say that, Hamas definitely did this. But you also cannot say that. It is very difficult to say that. You don't have really good proof to say that Hamas did this, other than the word of Israel, and then a bunch of countervailing Doppler fucking proof against you. So it's like everyone is operating on this axiomatic faith level at some point. I think... and everybody thinks, including me, that they are the more informed party, that they have the ability to cut through the bullshit with their extended media literacy skills. And I guess you have to believe that about yourself at some point, because, it becomes an extension of your beliefs. You believe that your beliefs are informed by your rationality and not the other way around. You always do, right? But it's often the opposite. But except for me, I'm the one that is correct. I am the one that is correct. So, yeah, and that's that whole, even talking about the hospital bombing, seems frustrating, because it's like, okay, we're dithering about this one hospital bombing when Israel has done a bunch of other bombings that nobody is disputing, or like nobody's really seriously saying that Hamas did, including that recent one at the church. I'm sure people are disputing that and saying Hamas did it or something like that. But yeah, Christian Church was recently bombed by Israel. That everyone pretty much agrees that Israel did that shit. So why are we dithering about this one bombing? Because the thing of that is that's part of the strategy too. You present this information which seems disprovable or slightly disprovable, and you end up getting people arguing about it constantly, and that obfuscates the general message of, oh, they're doing a bunch of way more provable destruction. Maybe we should be focusing on that. Maybe you are, succumbing to that propaganda by constantly harping on the disinformation about the hospital issue. But the other thing about it is is that you need to disprove disinformation too, or you need to call it into doubt or have the conversation about it, because you need to show that one party is capable of producing very elaborate bullshit that is used to obfuscate, or at least that's the reason that the hospital bombing discussion is happening, because and it continues to occupy some arguments, because it is you sort of, if you're trying to get at the whole like holistic difficulties with talking about Israel, you have to address the fact that they do lie. They do lie sometimes, and it's difficult to trust what they say because of the many instances of them doing that, the many provable instances of them doing that we know about. I really, I think there was also that. There was also just, there was that really confusing one that was released where it was a bunch of, like, it was a post by some guy on Twitter. The same guy, I might add, who initially posted that Israel did the airstrike bombing and then deleted it. But this guy, he posted a picture of Palestinians. Look at your Hamas leadership. They're in luxury while you are suffering. And it was a picture of them playing ping pong. Hamas leadership playing ping pong. They're on a private jet. They're doing workouts and stuff. The thing about the pictures is that they were AI. I don't know if they were wholly generated by AI. There was a community note on Twitter that said that these photos have only been retouched by AI. Oh, okay, they've only been retouched by AI. There's some sort of core photograph that's out there. Can I see that photograph? No, I can only see the AI retouched photographs. Okay, just stuff that's like, what are you doing? Why is this so sloppy? Did it used to be this sloppy? Was like it feels, and that's why it feels like I'm taking crazy pills, or my natural intuition towards the believing in the pro-Palestine information more, because it doesn't seem like their propaganda is as like weirdly on its face strange and manufactured. I mean, some of it I'm sure might be, but who knows? I don't fucking anything. But Jesus Christ, yeah, the shittiness of the fucking Hasbara lately has been what's really been driving me fucking crazy, and feels like I'm like being gaslit by the world, and has only further served to enhance my intuitive belief that everything, you should just never really trust anything they say. They have sort of divorced themselves from my ability to trust them, and I wouldn't want to trust them. I would want to believe. I was raised Jewish. I want to believe that Israel is good and does good things. I want to believe that this homeland for the Jews, the Jewish people were given a homeland, and we were able to wield power responsibly, and we are a shining beacon on the hill. But I don't think we are. I don't think we're, and I say we because I do feel there is some part of me that is married to this fucking weird statecraft project, and I feel like I am complicit or responsible for it somehow, as a fucking Jewish person. And so, I have to take responsibility for this as well, which is why I feel that I have to say that no, they lie, and it's difficult to trust them on anything. Whether you trust Hamas on stuff that's a different conversation. But I would see why Hamas would need to, they're, because if you believe like me, they're dealing with like an asymmetrical thing, but I don't know where I'm fucking going with that. Either way, it's just whether or not you can believe that you're the most rational person on earth, you can believe that you're above it all, you have the strength to assess this purely and reasonably. You are like, you sort of have this Kissinger-like ability. We're in this, the Israel-Palestine situation is more complicated than just an oppressed and oppressor, because there's this delicate balance of terror proxy war that is happening over that region between a bunch of interested parties. You can believe that, and if you do believe that at your heart, you will always be more willing to trust what Israel has to say. And I don't think you're, unlike a lot of people on the left, and I'll get heat from the left, I don't think you're monsters for this. I think you've been, I think there are reasons you have to believe that however flawed our state or current system or democracy, however bloody and brutal, there is some sort of existential threat to it. There is, which is represented by, I don't know, an encroaching Islamo-fascist threat, even though by my reckoning, I don't think they have any sort of power to, like, Iran. People are fucking Iran. Oh, it's gonna escalate to that, which I was, I was speculating or fearful of. But we killed one of their generals. They did nothing. We murdered one of their guys just out and out, and they were like, this sucks, but don't really have the resources to fight the U.S. We don't have the money to do that, really. So if they didn't, escalate over that. It's gonna be difficult to see what will propel them to do it. But yeah, maybe I am the one who is axiomatically poisoned because of my bias. I have bought into the woke narrative of oppressed versus oppressor, and see whatever the oppressor does is justified in their pursuit of freedom. Maybe I've been poisoned by that or whatever. I don't know. The answer to that is no. I am the rational one. Because my intuition is better. I think at that point, it's weird how eventually the people who will be the best at assessing what is real and what is fake will be the people that have the best intuition, which is fucking crazy to think about. But that's what it's going to come down to. People that have this ability to make qualitative observations in such a way, in a world where quantitative observations are no longer reliable. And that will become the way in the future which we will divine truth. It's already how we're divining truth right now. I mean, to some degree, it's always how we've divined truth, but during the Enlightenment and even now, we've held on to these ideas that there is a greater truth to be held. There is some sort of rational or objective truth that science or logic or academic skepticism can divine. And we held on to those ideas in certain intellectual circles for a time, but it got eroded by technology, So that's where we're at now. And if you've listened to me ramble about this and my sort of uninformed everyday style, I'm not Mr. News Genius. I don't think you are necessarily better informed for having listened to me. I'm talking about what I feel. If you take something from this, then good. So how do you? So there's also like a corollary to this, which is when you are constantly affronted with this information, these dueling pieces of seemingly credible information, and you don't know how to divine it, it creates an insanity effect. You feel like you're going insane. You feel like you're being gaslit. You feel like you're a protagonist in a Philip K. Dick novel. Like the world around you is not your world. And so how do you fight this? Just in a general, not just through intuition, but how do you fight the feeling that you're going insane? And to me, there is like a sort of there's a weird. I'm going to relate it to. You might think I'm a fucking asshole, and I probably am a fucking asshole. But with Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley, obviously a fucking nut job, and Satanism is dumb, and a fucking weirdo, and he didn't. Nothing what he said is like objectively correct in any sense of the word, but there are certain metaphorical exercises that I think we can learn about his understanding of the word magic and what the phrase magic was, where in Aleister Crowley's understanding, and like my limited understanding of what Aleister Crowley believed, was that magic, more than sort of spells enacting a physics chain reaction that can spontaneously generate fire or something like that, magic is much more like this language programming thing. It's this thing where if you repeat a word enough, or if you do a sigil, or if you put enough effort or repeat an idea, you are sort of going to subconsciously and influence those around you to subconsciously act in a way as to bring this idea into fruition. It's, and that's just life, that's just talking to people. That's just expressing an idea, right? But accompanying this magic, and what makes it work, is literally your faith or your intuitive belief in it, how strong you believe in it. But also with magic is it is chaotic, and the information or the sensual information that you use to divine it changes every day and drastically at the drop of a hat. And so not only do you need the ability to construct a worldview that you have the utmost belief in, but to also destroy that worldview at a moment's notice once different information or a different context has provided something, and then strongly believe in that worldview. Sort of like a form of super sanity or something like that, where you can have conviction, you can have faith, you can have intuitive belief, but you can also dash that conviction to have a new intuitive belief. And that is not, usually when that happens to people, when you have some sort of core religious or like axiomatic belief that is challenged, it is this devastating moment for people. But what you have to have is that you can't experience that devastation, because that's going to be every day from now on. You're going to be told something one day, you are going to form, your axiomatic core of beliefs are going to change around that information, and then the next day you will be told the opposite thing, or something that seems equally provable, and you will have to adjust to that. And that's, I think we're all in the process of learning how to do that as well. I think everybody is sort of doing, like, practicing this weird Satanist Crowley magic intuitively now, because of the nature of how reality has changed because of the constant language programming that is occurring. The constant repetition of an idea, whether true or false, or having some elements of truth or having some elements of falseness, just the fact that we live in this media world of rapidly repeating language viruses like Pontypool or something like that. That is now, or like Cities of the Red Night by Burroughs or something like that, that we have these, have to compete with these linguistic viruses now. I think the only way to deal with that is just to constantly have that shifting sense of axiomatic intuition. Wow, which isn't to say, don't change. You should still have core beliefs. You should still have things that undergird you, the like core humanitarian beliefs that people should be treated with a certain amount of rights and a certain amount of movement. Just relating your own personal experience, what you would want, not just your own personal experience, but also what rights could we provide to everyone such as to make the world more peaceful and less conflict-ridden, and to give people some shot at dignity or agency. I think those core axiomatic beliefs you don't fuck with. But in terms of the ones that undergird these issues that you can be easily influenced by or misled by disinformation by, I think those axiomatic beliefs, you need to be able to shift them if something new or something, some sort of shock moment happens. Or maybe I'm wrong about that. I could be totally fucking wrong about that, because that's the point of sort of shock moments, like we learned from Naomi Klein and the shock doctrine, is to get you to question your core beliefs, is to get you to question your core axiomatic beliefs and change them with information. So maybe what I just said was fucking bullshit. I guess the truth is I don't know how to deal with this. The greater truth is, forget about all that advice I just spun, because it's like I don't know how to deal with this, and neither do you. I guess it all comes down to what I said before. It's you need to, at some point, rely on intuition or a core axiomatic idea of what's happening. And my core axiomatic idea of what's happening is there is a very powerful country that sees a much smaller, significantly less powerful group of people as an existential threat to them. And they are doing things to them which you would do to people you thought were an existential threat. I do not believe the Palestinians are an existential threat to Israel at all. I do not think that. I think it's going to take a lot of countervailing information to make me believe that the Palestinians are a massive existential threat to Israel, in the same way that Israel is an existential threat to the Palestinians. That is what that loop of information and rationality and axiomatic thinking has led to me thus far. And so far, all of these news cycles of disinfo have yet to disabuse me of that belief. And if you think I'm a fucking asshole for it, that's whatever. I don't care. I know this. As much as I can know anything, I know that we are seeing a horrible fucking situation that one side exclusively has the power to end. Once again, you are asking people to give up power. One of the most difficult things to ask people to do. But that's what we have to do. And, I don't know the best ways to get at it. I do want to repeat the Palestinian charities I mentioned at the beginning of the program: the PCRF, the Medical Aid for Palestinians, the UNRWA, the ANERA, ANERA, and the Red Crescent Society of Palestine. Donate to those. I know, for whatever else you fucking believe about all of these situations, they need the fucking money a lot. And you would do, if you're worried about how you can help, besides, talking to your senators or emailing or showing up at demonstrations, cold hard cash is the way the world works, and that always helps. So thank you for listening. If you comment on it, you disagree, I'm interested to hear what you have to say. I don't want to, call you a fucker outright. I am less hostile to you than other maybe people that have my position. I want to have a conversation with you and try to convince you in a calm manner of why my axiomatic belief is the one that is truer than perhaps your current one. I think we can have a conversation about this. You talk to me, and let's try and figure out the truth together.